Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to ICB TV. So thanks, Thurlow. It's Friday, episode 151. I hope many of you caught our special intro to episode 150, which was on Wednesday. Some sort of an achievement, I think. Great, very pleased about that. And I am very pleased to say that I suppose today, really, I should have been joined by sweet Caroline, but I am actually joined by sweet Jacquie Mount. Hi, Jacquie. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of a Caroline at the moment, but I'm sure she doesn't know much about bookkeeping and everything as you do. So whoever you are out there, if there is a Caroline out there, forgive me. But didn't we do well?
Yeah.
Bit of conjecture as to whether we deserved it, but then again, normally it's us complaining that the hand of God or something else has got in the way of us winning. So perhaps, and the tide has turned, and we might be looking at 1966 again, which is we'll see. Let's see. I can see us having a slightly bigger struggle against Italy, but never mind. It's not all about football. So, Mrs. M, how are we doing on the furlough front?
Not too bad. I've only got a few things to do today. As Gary said, if you are into payroll, hopefully you watched or are intending to watch the episode that Ian did for his Wages Wednesday. I did watch it, and I didn't realise a couple of things I learned about holiday pay and how it's all calculated and paid that I was unaware. So I learned a lot of that as well. So I'm sure many of our members did. Hopefully it's again, it's one of those things you're going to need to watch it at least twice probably before you get it all there. But I know Ian's doing a lot more work with us and producing documents and all sorts of things for us, which will be really helpful to everyone. So that's great. So I'm not going to cover much, particularly on the coronavirus and the job retention scheme today, because we did it last week. Ian repeated it on Wednesday, so you probably had enough about that. You know, if you're in it, you know what you're doing, and we're not going to go again. There's nothing new. It's just a reminder. A couple of reminders here that the signing up for the VAT deferral scheme has closed. It closed on the 21st of June, but because we're now past the 30th of June, remember, if you've got clients who have not paid their deferred VAT going back to last June for the 3 months, April to June, then you're into penalties and fines and 5% interest payments and all that sort of thing now. So hopefully you've got all your clients sorted out, and that one won't actually apply. Some time ago, we talked about individuals being able to look at the furlough that's been claimed for them. Now, the figures have been updated, and they're now showing all claims in personal tax accounts. You can now go in, if you've had some furlough or your clients' employees have had furlough, they can go into their personal tax accounts if they've got one set up and actually see the amount of furlough that's been claimed on their behalf. So they can use this as part of a checking to say, well, actually, that's what the employers paid, but I didn't get anywhere near that. Therefore, I think, we're into possibly a whistleblower situation here. And they are doing this to assist in the trying to prevent fraud as far as the CGS claims are concerned. And of course, the other side of this is that they have a list in a spreadsheet of all the companies who have made claims month by month, and in bands of about 10 or 15 or 50,000 as to exactly what has been claimed by each employer. So that's available on the gov.uk website. And May claims, the May figures will be due out on the 29th of July. So they work about 2 months, 2 months behind to get it all done. One thing I picked up this week, before I go on to that, let's have a look at the 5th stage grant. Quick reminder that from now, you or your client should be being contacted by HMRC to confirm that they can actually apply for the 5th stage grant. Now, I had a lovely conversation with the member earlier this week, because don't forget, in order to claim this one, even if they claim the 4th stage grant, you've got to look at the comparison between this year and last year. So it's the second quarter's income, May to June, this year to last year. And you have to actually confirm that the turnover has been reduced. And if it's been reduced by more than 30%, you can claim 80% of the grant. of the profits in the grant, and if it's been reduced by less than 30%, but it's still been reduced, then you can claim 30% of the profits in the grant. So this one's quite complex, but there's been a lot in the news about this, and I think Garry mentioned last week, Amy did a quote for us in the Daily Express last week about how it all works. So that was all in there, and I think that that's actually up on our website, that you can have a look at that. Now, I've had quite a few inquiries coming through about self-assessment tax returns and matching the grants to the accounts that you're reporting. Now, I just want to confirm again that regardless of your accounting year, you have to put SAYS grants 1, 2 and 3 into the claim that you're making at the moment. So the accounts that you're submitting for the tax year 2020 to 2021, you have to put all 3 in. Now, I was talking to a member who has a client whose accounting year starts on the 1st of November. So actually not all the grants were included in that accounting year that she's reporting, because she's reporting November to October. So it doesn't actually include the 3rd grant, but it has to be put in there. And this means that actually the grant that's being claimed in the year looks proportionally much more than it perhaps should have done as far as the income is concerned. And that was causing a bit of problem because, of course, that's going to be taxed. So in fact, what happens is you could be being taxed on, say, the 2nd and the 3rd grants, where actually it comes into a different accounting year. But another member I was talking to was saying that when you actually go in to do the tax returns, it is flashing up the amount that has been given. Now, that's something I hadn't heard of before. So if anybody else is aware of this or hasn't had it, was interesting that once they entered into starting the new tax return, a box came up and said, by the way, there's been a SAYS grant. This is the amount we think you've been paid. And what HMRC are doing is they are actually looking at the tax returns that are being submitted and checking the figure against what was paid. And they are coming back and possibly overwriting what you or your clients are putting into their tax returns and changing the tax calculation. So do watch out for that if you're doing it. And if there's any queries on that, do come back and let me know, and I'll talk to you about it, and we'll try and see if this is a general thing or it's happening to individuals. Because this particular member had someone who she thought had claimed a SAYS grant, but it isn't showing up on the self-assessment tax return. So the answer, the query there is, did that person actually claim it, or were they not able to claim it because their profits were too high? But if you're in that situation, and we also know that members are not sure about the amount that's being claimed because it's gone into the client's personal account, they have never seen it, because don't forget, the client had to do this themselves. But if this amount is showing up in the actual SAT return, then that should solve those problems. So just watch out for that. And that's, I think, all I've got on coronavirus. Looking back to the IR35 that we did off payroll working, through Ian's payroll webinar on Wednesday, he was being asked if we could produce some various bits and pieces about this, about following the flowchart through, and we're looking at producing that to go onto our website. But if you are still not sure, or you want to learn more about this off payroll working, gov.uk have some YouTube videos. There are flowcharts. There's the CEST tool, the checking tool for employment status. There's a lot actually on gov.uk, on YouTube and on their site about this. So if you're still not sure, then, do try and follow those through.
We've just had a reminder, Jackie, by the way, that only people who are qualified in payroll can actually get access to the webinars. So that's...
Yes, that's absolutely correct. For the payroll webinars, they can. For the IR35, it's anyone who is a member or a payroll agent, because we put that onto both. But yes, for the payroll, Wages Wednesdays, it's purely for that. But of course, IR35 does include more than just the payroll. A reminder, not that we as bookkeepers getting involved in this for our clients, but July the 31st is the deadline for reapplying for tax credits for the year. Now, again, the feedback I've had from this is that this year, I don't know whether this is a cyclical thing, it happens every couple of years, but they seem to be asking an awful lot more evidence than they've ever done before. So don't get caught out because the deadline is very short. So if you've got people who you know are doing that, then make sure they've got all the evidence they need. Particular individual I was talking to had uploaded everything that they were asked for and that they'd ever done before, and suddenly they've come back with a whole host of other information, including a birth certificate, which they've now got to try and get for someone, and it's proven to be a bit difficult if you don't have all of your information there. So do watch out for that one if you're involved in this. Interesting little item I picked up on people who are applying for certain licenses. Now, the two that were mentioned were taxi drivers and scrap metal dealers. Now, it would not be a stretch of the imagination to accept that those two employment or work areas are ones that are quite likely to include cash-based income that may or may not be declared. Now, I'm not saying anything about taxi drivers or scrap metal dealers who work completely within the law, but as you can imagine, there is a possibility that there might be some income that's not being declared. Now, interestingly enough, HMRC are now asking for, not asking, they are no longer going to be issuing licenses automatically if there are not full tax returns being done, and if there are any queries on their tax, the license will be held up. So if you've got any clients who might be in that situation, they're applying for a license renewal, do make sure that everything is up to date on their tax, because otherwise they might not get registered. And again, this is somewhere else where HMRC are trying to tighten up on the fraud side to make sure they're doing that.
Yeah, I think it's a rounding of the circle. We've suggested this before, and I think it's a good thing. But it does mean that bookkeepers have to be particularly careful and make sure that they look at everything that's going through a business. Or we've had a couple of queries recently where people suspect some bits of the business are not actually going through the business accounts. I think we said a couple of months back about somebody who'd asked to see personal accounts and were refused originally, but then told, well, I'm sorry, I have to see it or I can't do your return. And they found, was it 50,000, Jackie? Something like that?
Yeah, I think it was. It was a lot of money went through as well.
Yeah. And, I was watching somebody recently and they were talking and they were saying, oh, well, when I get close to the VAT threshold, I put some money through my wife's account so it doesn't push me over the threshold. And, there's a lot of this sort of stuff goes on. And, there's always been this, the government's always want to take too much money and everything else. I think that whole thing has shifted because of COVID and because people have been propped up by the government in many, many cases. I think the public now wants people to pay what's due to them. And we've seen that with a lot of the celebrities who've now had to move their tax back onshore and all this sort of stuff. So, be very careful. Do not side with a client just because you think they're nice people and sort of look the other way. You can't do that.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. One of the consultations we've done recently is to do with this tax avoidance schemes and how people, we're looking at the sanctions that should be taken and the prosecutions and fines and ring-fencing fines, and that if anybody is involved at any way in the chain, it may not even be the company who set the scheme up. If it's some sort of intermediary, unless it can be proven that they really did do this in good faith and didn't realize that it was a scam, can be held responsible, as well as the actual taxpayer who's got to pay back the tax. That the intermediaries and anyone down the chain, they're looking at making them available for prosecution and the payment of an equal fine as well, and tax against the tax. So interesting, that one, but that's at the discussion stage. But that was certainly one of the suggestions that HMRC are looking at. They're really, really trying to clamp down now, and there's an awful lot of work going on there with that. The only last bit of information I got for you popped up this week is for those of you who do CT returns for clients, you probably know this, but the carry back period where you can carry back your losses has now been extended for a further 2 years than the current rules allow. This is because of the pandemic, obviously. So there are new rules for CT returns if you're reclaiming back losses. So you need to watch out for that one. If you're involved in that, you probably know about it anyway. If you're involved and you don't know, then I suggest you go and have a look at extended loss carryback and see if that fits you. And that's all I picked up today. It's been a fairly quiet week today.
Well, you say that. You've been doing
As for
some
me.
reports recently. Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, it's perhaps a good job. And you and I have been discussing this. There are a couple of reports coming up at the moment. We're trying to figure out what's actually behind them.
Yeah.
The sort of information, bits of information they're sort of drip feeding us with. But you and I are both saying, look, there's a little bit more to this than is coming out, we think. And this particular, the one I'm thinking of is all this about making tax digital, where you're going to get 4 returns a year instead of 1. And there is a move to let bookkeepers do 1, 2, and 3, but everybody then has got to go to an accountant for 4. Now, we're fighting that, obviously, because we think that's a retrograde step. Firstly, because it will mean that every client has to have an accountant, but also that it's flying in the face of the fact that we think bookkeepers are the best guardians for micro businesses and small businesses anyway. And it's not right. And what we've got to try and do is once again prove that bookkeepers are professionals in their own right, that they can do this sort of stuff. And I think the problem is that people just don't always realise. And it's not a question of us not telling them, but personnel in government departments tend to rotate quite a lot. And you get a new person coming in who suddenly thinks a bookkeeper just adds up numbers and passes it on automatically.
I mean, Garry, you're right. You and I go back on this particular area for 6 years now since they ever started looking at MTD, and we have both talked about the agents, because most of you who have tax agent status are probably aware that if you're moving people across from previous accountants or bookkeepers to yourself, you've got to change that agent status. But also what came up, and anyone who was listening to, I think it was on the Inspire Tour week when Werner and I were doing our question and answer panel, the question came up there about bookkeepers doing these quarterly returns, and yet either that person or another bookkeeper or an accountant does the year-end adjustments, because to do that final 5th upload and confirmation, you do need to have the tax exams and be able to know what to do with the year end. And suddenly HMRC, or Werner went back to HMRC and mentioned this, and they sort of said, well, wait a minute, we can't have 2 tax agents for the same head of service. So, you know, to have 2 agents. So I've just been sent some information from Werner we have to have a look at. And I have a meeting with HMRC in a couple of weeks. I think it's towards the end of this month, I think, to actually talk to HMRC. It's another of our 6 of them, and Werner and me and whoever else wants to come on with me, to actually talk about what our bookkeepers do. And if I can just pick up on another area where this has arisen this week, we've got to put in the last of our consultations next week. This is to do with the whole modernisation of the tax administration system. And they've been looking over the last 2 months, they've been looking at different sections of this. And this week it was to do with investigations. Now, for once in my life, having done 3 workshops, I actually said very little. I listened, but I didn't actually contribute. And the reason I didn't contribute was most of the people on the group were either practicing accountants or from, I think there was a lady from the low income tax reform group and some of the other groups, which are not professional bodies as such, but represent certain tranches of taxpayers. And these were obviously people who pick up investigations from people who have got it wrong, either because they've done it themselves or they've had someone that's done it wrong for them. And HMRC have slung in an investigation. And how do they deal with that investigation? Because they have no historical knowledge of the clients. And I've thought a lot about this week, and this goes back to what Garry said. Most of our members, and do correct me if I'm wrong here on the chat line, that this is the sort of thing I'm coming back with. Because of the nature of what ICB do, we work with our clients week in, week out. We know those accounts, we know those figures. And if there is an inquiry because they think something's not right, we will have the evidence to back that up. And from the members that I've spoken to, the vast majority of people who have been involved in inquiries have actually been proved to be correct, and it hasn't gone as far as a serious investigation, and we've able to get it done. But what the standard view is that when HMRC do raise an issue, they don't actually tell you what the issue is. They want you to tell them what the issue is. And the example that I have put forward in our document is there's at least one member who had a client had an inquiry into their CJRS calculations. And all they were asked to say is, will you please check your calculations because we think they may be wrong, but they haven't said why. They haven't given any evidence as to why they're looking at. And I know this caused the particular member quite a lot of distress when she was going through her figures. And we went through the figures and we're absolutely certain that it's correct. And it was fine. It didn't actually get taken any further. But what came out this week is that HMRC are causing quite a lot of distress and consternation because of the amount of information that they're actually telling us when they've got an investigation going. So it's going to be interesting to watch this space because there's a lot going on there, because the majority of people this week felt that there is a fine line between what HMRC want to give you in the information they've got and you faffing around in the dark because you're not sure what the inquiry is about. So yeah, watch this space. I'll come back to you if I get any more information on that one.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the investigations that we do for the money laundering. You know, we will say to somebody, right, the first thing the inspector says is there anything you want to tell me that we don't know? And that worries some people because they think, well, what do they know? Quite sometimes we will have picked something up, but sometimes it's just to give you the chance to come up with something that you've been sitting on and not quite got round to, just so that we don't find this out halfway through an investigation and I think, well, hold on a minute, you wouldn't have told me this if I hadn't have asked. And you say, oh, well, I was going to tell you, and all this sort of thing. And I think sometimes HMRC, they've obviously got every single taxpayer in the country on the system, and some people's accounts will, on a law of averages, look a bit odd. So they will ask questions because it doesn't match the norm for that type of business. Well, they have the ability to believe that there is a normal small business because they are who they are. You and I, and everybody here listening today knows no two small businesses are exactly the same. But nowadays, when they've got fewer actual inspectors out there, they're relying far more on algorithms. So, you know, if you've got a small business that's paying very little tax compared to every other small business of that size, they'll think, oh, well, I wonder if something is disappearing somewhere. And I know they will look at particular sectors. They've looked at taxi drivers, we know that. They've looked at restaurants. They've looked at building companies and various other things. I think somebody sits there and think, well, you know, I've had one bad client who, I don't know, sells fish or something or other. So let's look at all the fishmongers, you know, and that's what happened. You know, it's a trigger. And that's it. So
it was interesting. It was interesting that what came across from a couple of the members on the group was that historically HMRC were a lot more approachable with this, and you actually had an individual that you could speak to and you could discuss this with at an early stage and try and get it sorted out as soon as possible. But it tends to be much more anonymous now and not so individual, and you're never quite sure who you're going to get, and it's done by emails and rather than a telephone call to sort it out. But I think it was more along those lines than. But yeah, hear what you're saying. So anyway, that was my week this week.
Great. I think generally for the last 24 3/4 years or whatever it is, we've been battling away trying to show that we are professional. So everything that we're doing as an institute is to prove that point. And as I say, the annoying thing is that we have to keep reproving the point. You know? But then again, when you look at us being around for 25 years, ICAW has been around for 138, is it, or something like that, you know, and they're still struggling on occasion. So it's just one of those things we have to put up with. And new governments, new people in Whitehall come up with strange things. I note that in, I think it was March of this year in the House of Lords, Lord Prem Sikka, who is a well-known antagonist against ICAW and ACCA, etc., and accountants, was again talking about professional bodies should not be regulators, etc. You know, there must be an external person, and then he doesn't like FCA either particularly. So, you know, this is going on all the time, and the thing is that it's quite often whoever is in the debate on the day can make a big difference. So if you haven't got a friend or ally in that particular debate, or somebody that believes in what we do, somebody can make the wrong decision based on a lack of information, and that's just the nature of democratic politics, I think. So anyway, we're continuing to follow this through, and then when we get something which says, well, what about bookkeepers and so on? So surely they don't do this, or surely they don't do that. I have to sort of rack my brain. And what have I said that somebody's misunderstood, or do you think they're just testing us out, or what? And we really don't know. And but we will do our best. And of course, the best way for us to succeed is for you constantly, as members, to prove that you are professional. So you don't get caught out by HMRC for having got something wrong, and you put your figures in and you put them in on time, and your clients are the best clients that they have. I think they said a little while ago that the majority of problems, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, actually come from the non-professional body tax agents and what have you, they believe. So it sort of proves the point, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll make the decision that everybody's got to be regulated. They could come up with anything. So
we really don't know where this is going to go at the moment. All we know at the moment is that they've stated that HMRC have decided at this point in time not to insist that everybody is represented by a professional body, but they don't yet know what the answer to it is. But no, it's absolutely true, and all the professional bodies are picking this up, that we're all having to go through these hoops. Now, I know we should be doing this for quality anyway, but it's the non-represented ones who cause the most problems, and who then sort of disappear. And as Garry said last week, just making them take out professional indemnity insurance is not going to improve the standards, and that was a consensus across everyone I've spoken to this week. And HMRC have sort of taken that on board, I think, and are looking more at sort of carrots versus the stick approach with people who get it wrong. So we're really not sure where HMRC are going to go with this yet.
No, but as a professional body, we've just got to make sure that we're doing our bit and we're getting it right. And we're looking at various ways of continually proving this. And we'll be introducing new things over the next next few months before the anniversary. Our anniversary, we've got trying to get a lot in there, because we will be having an online summit again this year, and we're going to be introducing a lot of things there. So we're trying to get a few more things off the ground, really to help you do your job better, or to prove that you're doing a good job now, whichever way you look at it. That's what we're here for. I think the main thing is that you've got to realize that a lot of it is going to be down to you. We only know as much about you as you tell us. We only know when you need help if you tell us that you need help. It would be a great assistance to the Institute if that wasn't when you are up to your neck in something and then you try and get us to help you dig yourselves out. We need to get to your problems a little earlier in the day. And if we can work these things through together, you're not going to get a black mark against you and all that. I don't think that's automatically what we do. It isn't. We are here first and foremost to protect you, to make you better at what you do, so that you don't get into any form of trouble. So sometimes we have to give you worst case scenarios and the occasional frightening scenario where you think, oh goodness, I might, I'm going to give up bookkeeping. Never do that on the basis of what we're telling you. Just look at it and think, yeah, okay, they're helping me, they're warning me what could happen. And that's it. Our life would be far easier if you never came across bad clients, that you never made a mistake, and that you all did everything properly. So yeah, let's all work together on this one. It's really very, very important that we do this. I'm back in the pew again, the pulpit again, aren't I? I do apologise, but
no, it's important.
This is how I'm spending my day nowadays: is fending off people and trying to prove that our members are the best bookkeepers in the land, if not the world.
Absolutely. Okay, you're very quiet this afternoon, peoples. No questions. We've had one quick question. Just a reminder that the payroll webinar is only available to those that are payroll agents or have the designation PM DIP after their name.
I think there was a question before, but it's gone. So whether
I've answered that was it. Can anybody watch the payroll? And no, only those who have got the and it's not just those who have passed their exam, it's those who are actually taken out the PM DIP designation or who are payroll agents as their membership grade. So
Yeah, people are going to be looking for that designation. So somebody says, well, okay, I know I've passed it. Can't I put it on my practice license? Isn't that the end of it? Yeah, we're asked to make sure that it is obvious which members can do that and which members can't. Now, we are looking at what to do about self-assessment tax, which is different, and various things. So we are working on it. But at the moment, the payroll is the big one. That some people just do payroll. We do have members who are only working with payroll. Kirsty.
Afternoon, Kirsty.
Let's go on to films. I'm off to watch the new Black Widow shortly at the cinema when child comes from home. Benefits of flexible working.
Yeah,
actually, that's interesting. We've well, first of all, welcome to our latest ICB team member, and Manisha, known as Nisha, I gather by looking at her there. So we have done typical ICB. We've got 2 Amy's. We've now got a Manisha and a Nimisha. So Nimisha is the one that is working with us at the moment, part-time, because she's busy looking after her first baby. But we now have Manisha, known as Nisha, just to make it even more difficult. And so she started on Monday, so welcome. Yeah, as far as the films are concerned, I don't think I've got one for this week. Jackie, anything come across your desk?
Not that I've seen, but my sister-in-law did say she went to see The Father yesterday, and she said if you go to see it, it's an amazing film. If you go to see it, do take plenty of handkerchiefs with you, though, because it is very moving.
I think the football seems to be taking over a lot. I mean, they're looking for record viewing figures this weekend. If it touches 30 million, apparently will beat the current record holder, which is when Den gave Angie the divorce papers.
Oh, really? That goes back a few years. I remember that one.
Just short of 30 million, so they're thinking it might go over that. But
Yeah.
Never mind. I mean, that was a long time ago.
It was. That was when I used to watch EastEnders. I haven't watched that for as long as I can remember.
No, I keep seeing the trailers, and it seems like,
even more doom and
gangsters
gloom than
all
it
the rest
always
of it.
was.
It's lost it a bit, but never mind.
Yeah. And Claire says hooray for flexible working. I agree with you.
Yeah, ICB, we are very flexible at the moment. As I've mentioned this several times over the last 18 months, 24, whatever it is. Our office is there. We are actually, 1 or 2 people are trickling back to the office because they've had enough of working from home. Most of us are probably still going to remain working remotely, partly because we've taken on new recruits that are all scattered across the country. So we will continue to do that. Again, you shouldn't really notice any difference, because when the phones are picked up, you don't know whether it's in the London office or it's in Blackpool or Manchester, or I'm trying to think where, Nottingham, wherever. So I think you've all said our service has been maintained, and we will be doing that however we do it. We are doing some extra recruiting at the moment, because the number of members is going up, number of inquiries are going up, number of applications is going up, thankfully, so it's all looking good. So whether or not they'll be based in London and sitting in an office or wherever, we don't really know. But anyway,
it's interesting, actually. Yeah, talking about flexible working, Verna on her emails has a little, almost like a disclaimer rider underneath her signature that says to maintain a work-life balance, she works flexibly and therefore may be sending emails outside hours. Please do not feel you have to respond outside our working hours. I thought it was rather.
Well, we know from our team that, unfortunately, I've got one of those phones that pings every time I get an email, and I crawl into bed at 1 o'clock or something or other, and then I find that one of the team is sort of burning the midnight, past midnight hours. Amy Copeland is particularly good at that, and Lucy, I've noticed recently, works some odd hours because she likes to pick the children up from school, which is great. That's what if nothing else has come out of COVID, I think the knowledge that we can actually work flexible hours. Unfortunately, if you've got to be answering a phone between 9 and 6 to answer queries and various other things, there isn't that much flexibility that can be built in, but we are doing some of that. We are doing some of it. And so on the basis that we don't have any films, what I would suggest is if any of you are fans of Northern Soul, old enough to remember that, you ought to look at a series of videos by a girl called Levanna, Levanna McLean. And basically all she's done, she's made herself a name for dancing to old soul records. And she just shows pictures of her dancing in the old soul way. So some of you will remember when we used to, well, duck down on two knees, spin round, jump all over the place and all the rest of it. And basically, normally bemused women stood there while the men jumped around, kicking the handbags out of the way and occasionally maiming somebody. But anyway, some of us tried it, some of us didn't. But she does, she dances to all sorts of records. So if you have a look at that, that's on YouTube. I don't think there's much else on there, although I was speaking to somebody earlier this week who raised a query with me about something I mentioned in something like episode number 80 something. She said, well, I'm going through them slowly because I wasn't a member then. She said, no, I've got through about 60 of them so far. Wow. So wow, that's good, isn't it? Yeah. So I thought, well, what I'm going to do is go back and have a look at the first couple and just see what we actually said, because the world was different in those days.
It's interesting if you do go through those, because I looked at a couple of old ones just to check what they said. And of course, I will put the rider on that information has been updated since those early ones. With me particularly, and you as well, Gary, is our hairstyles change over the last 15 months. It's got longer and longer and shorter and shorter.
Yeah, I am again due for a haircut, but yeah, I'm still a bit wary about going out, and the idea that, what is it, a couple of weeks' time we'll all be walking out with no masks, all the rest of it. I mean, it's a bit risky, but you know,
the picture of all those football fans leaving Wembley, and I know it was in the open air, but none of them wearing a mask and things, walking down Wembley Way, I found a little perturbing. So we shall see.
Yeah. What can you say? But anyway, I think we're.
Yeah, well, nobody's putting anything up today, so yeah, I think it's going to be a short day, Gary.
Yeah, no, it's just the last one there was Claire, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Janita to all panelists, thank you. Yeah, Black Widows. That doesn't sound wonderful. What's Black Widows about? Never mind.
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's probably it. So a bit of an early break. I think the weather's not looking particularly good. Oh, it's a Marvel Avengers film. Well, Kirsty, I wouldn't have put you down as a Marvel fan, but never mind. I'm sure.
No, but the kids probably are. The children are.
Yeah.
Go with it. It's a good excuse. I tell you one thing, having children is a good excuse to do things that you wouldn't normally do, but really want to do. But you have to have a child with you to make it look as though that's what you're doing, and you're actually having a whale of a time yourself. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so have a great weekend. I'm hoping we've all got something to, well, the English ones of us amongst us have got something to cheer about on Sunday and throughout next week. I think the weather's going to brighten, isn't it, from this weekend?
Yeah, so it's supposed to be a heat wave in the last 2 weeks of July, apparently, just as schools break up, which will be good. Yeah,
I'm fed up with this bit of sun and then a bit of rain, and it's doing wonders for the weeds, if nothing else, you know.
Yeah.
All right, Jackie. Well, thank you very much again.
Oh, Cruella. Yes. She says Cruella. Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Okay.
Much, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.